my name's Amanda. I am a sophomore.
My name is Pedro Pimentel, and I'm the writer, director, producer of The Priest.
My name's Rebecca Howland, and I am a local independent filmmaker.
My name is Alex Safian. I'm a junior in the CHS Film Society.
All right, so we're going to be taking some questions from the crowd and from our live stream here. So if anyone has a question, feel free to raise your hand, and I will come over to you with the mic, and we can ask some questions. So as a base question, I'll get the questions rolling here. What kind of process did you guys go through when creating your films? Now, obviously, we haven't seen Amanda and Alex's film yet, so feel free to give a little teaser of what they will be seeing in a couple minutes.
Okay. So my film and Amanda's film that will be coming up is called Mortality. It took a pretty good long process. We worked a lot with Dominic Scotti, one of the presidents of our club, and it was a lot of work. There were a couple instances where we broke some things, but that's all fun in the process. Anyone else want to talk?
I started writing the first film that was supposed to be in this, Remorse. You will be seeing a trailer for that today, and hopefully the full version next year. But we had a little bit of issues, a tiny bit of fallout, so we did not end up getting to finish the entire thing for this year. So a couple days before we found out, that we wouldn't be able to put Remorse in the festival, we decided to scrap together a prequel to Remorse, and that is called Mortality. And it's just like we thought it would be 1 to 2 minutes, but it ended up being 6.5, so it is a full-length film. So we just decided that we wanted to put something in because we were both really inspired from everything we watched happen last year. So I'm really excited that you guys get to see it today.
All right, so what was the question?
The question was, what was the process of making your short film?
Yeah, the process is, you try to think of an idea, but you just can't come up with anything. So one day before you go to sleep, something pops up in your head, and you're like, I have to make a film about this. So you write it down so you don't forget it the next morning. And you just work on it for 3-4 months, a year.
It's so true.
And then you hate it, and then you love it, and then you change it, and then you continue to hate it, and then you love it again. And after you feel pretty confident with the story that you wrote, and then you talk to other people about it, and people are probably going to be pointing out things that are like, oh my goodness, how did I not even see that? And then you go, fundraising, getting the cast, getting the crew, getting the locations, the equipment, the props, the costumes, the music, everything, and you just prep, be as ready as much, just be as much prepared as you can for the shoot, just so so you're ready when you're on set and things start to go wrong, because they'll always go wrong, and you just have to be pretty dynamic when it comes to that.
You'll have to explain what happened on set with the fire trucks in a little bit. Okay. So Rebecca, same question to you.
Sure.
What process have you gone through when producing some short films?
Well, I don't have a movie showing here, so I can't talk about a specific film. But as Pedro said, it really starts with the story. So whether you are the one writing the story, which is a process unto itself, or whether you find another script that you are making, that's what you really need to start with. Is it a compelling story? And I would say the next most important thing is building a good team. It all starts with pre-production. I know people who have tried to do films completely on their own. It's not fun. It's very, very difficult, and it can be very challenging at the independent level to find a good team who's willing to donate their time and their services for little or no money. There are people out there, and when you find them, you tend to cling to them because it's very rare, but there is talent out there. So I highly encourage anyone making a film to devote the time to pre-production and building your team. And the actual production part, it's the most exciting, but in a way it's almost the quickest, because after production, which again has its own levels of problems, I mean, a day doesn't go by on set normally where some catastrophe doesn't happen, but that's, you know, the magic of filmmaking, you make it work. Post-production, as Pedro was saying as well, I encourage people, it's something I struggle with a little bit, is taking constructive criticism, because what has happened to me on projects is this person suggests this and this person suggests this, and after a while you have to try to filter through what actually is an improvement to your film versus what is a complete deviation from your idea. Because as a filmmaker, if your name is on it, that's your name, so you can't completely change it just because somebody doesn't quite see the vision, because you're the one who sees it in your head. So I guess that's my answer.
I completely agree. So we have a question over here. What's your question?
My question is, was it difficult to get the props and the materials necessary to make your films?
Well, it's still working. Sometimes it can be as easy as just going on Amazon and just, you know, getting, like, searching for what you need, and then it's gonna appear there and you just get it. But sometimes I feel like the most difficult things to find is a good location, and if you're doing a period film, it's really hard to find old stuff, you know, because you don't want to use something, you want to use something that is old, but at the same time it doesn't look worn out on screen, because when the movie takes place, it wasn't old, it was new to them, you know what I'm saying? So finding the costumes, I was just lucky to find a website when they sell like full outfits for from the Victorian era, from the, you know, from the 1800s, and that's where we got all the costume for the movie. The props for the priest, we worked with the Concord community players, and they were able to let us use a lot of their props in the film. Basically, all of the props that we used in the movie were from the community players, all the background props and everything. And in the location, we worked with Kimbo Jenkins State, which is right at North Main Street. I think it's on Main Street. And they were very friendly with us, and they let us use the location for the shoot. A few things went wrong with the location because we accidentally set off the fire alarms. But you know, it's more like there was no rule to, you know, getting the props that you need. It's almost like you're learning as you're going after them.
Anyone else want to answer?
Sure. The question was props, right? Yeah, it's really just using your resources, and as Pedro said, you can go online. Something I've found, which I'll pass along to you guys, is sometimes places like local theater companies have things that they will let you use. And it's really about building just the network of people, and being respectful of locations and of people who are lending you props, because I've been in situations where it's very positive, and I work with places and theater companies again, and I've also had situations where whether it's the actors or the crew or whoever was not respectful of what we were using or where we were. So you don't want to burn bridges.
Either Alex or Amanda.
So for props, we actually got really lucky. Our friend and film, I guess, director, Dom, he found this really interesting fake blood that we used in the film. We were originally going to go with just plain old ketchup, but the stuff that he found worked really, really well, so we were really happy with that. As far as other props, we kind of just went with whatever people had on hand. We kind of used with what we got. We didn't buy anything extra. But yeah, it turned out really well for us.
Student filmmaking at its finest. We have another question here. Which question?
Hey, yeah, I'm the guy who's filming back here with Concord TV. So my question for you guys, hey everybody, I know all of you up there. I think I know what each of you would answer for this, but I'm curious who your favorite filmmaker is, or I guess to phrase it differently, which current filmmaker or a particular film inspires you and the work that you either have done already or that you plan on doing. So it doesn't have to be for like a current film that you've done.
Hi there. I have so many movies that I just worship and just watch over and over. Good Will Hunting, directed by Gus Van Sant. I like Rain Man a lot. I like Quentin Tarantino, all of his films, stereotypical teenage filmmaker. Really anything by Steven Spielberg.
That's a hard question because I like so many films by different directors, but I feel like the directors that I tend to like the most is, I can definitely say Quentin Tarantino. I really like Quentin Tarantino's films. I really like Alejandro González Iñárritu, who did The Revenant, Birdman, 21 Grams, a bunch of good, cool movies. I really like David Fincher. He's a really good filmmaker. And Alfonso Cuarón, who directed Gravity, Children of Men, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. It's one of those things that there are so many filmmakers that it's really hard to pick a number. I can pick 100 of them and that will be fine with me, but just a few is a little difficult. But I tend to like a lot of older movies too, especially the religious epics from the 1960s. I think I grew up watching those movies, so that's pretty much the movie like Ben-Hur, King of Kings, and The Ten Commandments. Those are the films that inspired me to do The Priest, like the style of it.
They're remaking Ben-Hur. Did you know that? It's coming out at the end of the summer. I'm going to have to echo somewhat what everyone has said so far. I'm very envious of Quentin Tarantino's dialogue. That, for me, is something to have such a long scene, like in Inglourious Bastards, that opening scene where they're just sitting at the table talking, the skill that it takes to do that, so jealous. I like David Fincher as well. Gone Girl was one of my favorite movies of the past probably 5 years. I like dark, weird things, he hasn't done too much I could really list off top of my head, but I was also really obsessed with the remake of Mad Max. George Miller directed that. He directed the original ones too. But that film, I'm sure if you guys are film fans, you guys have seen it, but again, like with Tarantino, what George Miller was able to do with those action scenes, it takes an incredible amount of skill to be able to have a film that's basically 95% action and not make it boring for the audience. So something I really respect in a filmmaker is when they can take something that the normal person watching is like, yeah, they're sitting at a table having a conversation, how hard can that be? But if you actually sit there and try to write it and film it, it's not that easy. So I guess that's what I respect across the board from directors.
So for me, all those films are amazing films, as you know. But as far as inspiration for my filmmaking, I really like the special effects kind of department of filmmaking. So this one YouTube group that I watch, Corridor Digital, they're really amazing with their special effects. They can make something that looks completely normal and just warp the reality that you're looking at. So in Remorse, we had a couple special effects that I were inspired by some work that they did. So I really like making things look like something, but they're really something else, if that makes sense.
Fun fact, Alex is hopefully looking forward to learning more After Effects, which if you don't know After Effects, it's a effects program which allows him the ability to do certain things like make lightsabers and effects with wands or create digital characters that aren't really there, and he's looking forward to learning more of that next year.
Just like Pedro did back when he was in high school, right?
Yes, Pedro was very fond of doing wizard things in high school. Fun fact. We have another question here.
All right, so going through the process for you guys of making a film, what would you have to say is your favorite part of doing that?
The favorite part of the process?
Yeah.
It's one of those, I think before you begin it, like just the thrill, I'm going to be working on a new film, I think that's the best part of it. And then when you start working on it and everything starts to go wrong, you're like, you get a little stressed out. But then when you finish everything, you're like, yes. So I think my favorite parts are like beginning it and ending it. Those are my two favorite parts of the process.
I have to say my favorite part of filmmaking has to be those happy accidents where you shoot something and then you take a look at it and you're like, whoa, I was not expecting that to look that good. And then just the things you can do with like epic shots, like you always have that one perfect shot that you were surprised by. So that's my favorite part.
I wrote both mortality and remorse, and I think that was one of my favorite parts because I just liked being creative and thinking about all the different things that you can put together to make that happen. And I just really liked writing and developing the story, and that was really fun for me. And I also liked, like just what Alex said, the happy accidents. That after a full day of shooting, we watch all the footage and we're just amazed because our skills grow every time we shoot, and it's just, I love that.
Just a quick note, there's a film, it's not called Happy Accidents, but there's an old black and white movie called In Cold Blood, obviously based on the Truman Capote book. And there's I forget the name of the cinematographer, and I feel horrible, but they had a happy accident on that set with a shot when one of the characters is standing in a jail cell and he's looking outside and it's raining. They did not realize until after they shot it that the raindrops on the glass outside were casting shadows on his face that looked like tears going down his face. So there are some amazing happy accidents. But, and that was an amazing cinematographer. I can't remember his name. But for me, I think Pedro had said something about this before. I pretty much have a love-hate relationship with every single part of the process. It starts out, I'm like, oh my God, this is the best story. And then, oh my God, this is the worst story. And then, oh my God, this is so much fun. And then, oh my God, I'm never gonna finish, and this is gonna be a failure. And then it gets into post, and it's, oh my God, never gonna finish this, and I can't edit it together, and I didn't get every shot I needed. But if we didn't love it, we wouldn't do it over and over again. So I guess it's just ups and downs for every part is my answer.
Is that it? Okay. I have a question that came from the live stream. Feel free to correct this. They asked, what kind of filters did you guys use in your films? So I guess you can say what kind of color correction you kind of did, or because obviously in some of the films, they're darker than others. So I think, Pedro, you'd be a good candidate for this because The Priest was very dark.
Before I answer the question, I really want to say, like, my DPs for my next project, they were talking about that movie and you just could not think of the name of it. And then you're just like, it's like, oh, now I know it, so I can. But when it comes to the color of the movie, I really, bless you. I really wanted to, when you shoot a movie, you get the footage is very flat. That being said, the colors in it, there's so much information that it just it looks washed out. So you kind of have to not add the color, but take what you don't need out and just make sure it's going to be looking the way you want. But at the same time, it has to work. Every shot has to, the color correction for every shot has to look like, has to have an intention. You have to know what you're doing with it, because if you don't think about what you're doing with the color, it might work opposite to the movie or what you're trying to tell with the movie, so it can be a really big problem. And with The Priest, what we did with the color of The Priest was it's my very first short film, or my first film ever that I actually used warm color. And all of my other films are very blue, they're very cool, cool color, cool tones. nothing warm. And the Priest was the first one that I used warm colors. And what I did was I just saturated the movie, so it was like near black and white, but not really. So it was like 25-35% black and white, and then I just added this warm yellow color on top of it for the rest of the film. It starts with when you see in the streets, it starts very green, kind of like, because green is definitely not a very normal color in our everyday life. When you're looking outside, like when I'm talking about the shadows that you see outside, they're not green. They're usually like blue or warmer during the day. But for the Priest, we started with a very green color, and then as soon as he entered the house, it got very warm, very red and yellow. And for the last scene, for the exorcism part, for the second time he arrives at the girl's room, it's almost like you don't really notice it, but if you compare the very first frame in that scene to the very last one, the difference in color is huge, because we were turning the whole scene into blue towards the end of the movie, and you only notice it when you compare the first and the last shots. But at the end of it, the very last monologue of his mouth, speaking the lines from the Bible, it was like straight up blue. It was a very blue shot. So it really goes to kind of like figuring out what kind of story you want to tell, because I feel like the color nowadays is like a big thing about the process of the film. If you don't pick the right color, it's not gonna work well for you.
I have a question that will be for all of you here.
What advice do you have for somebody who wants to go into the film industry when they get older?
So for future Film Society members, what advice can you give? And I think Alex and Amanda have a pretty good advice that they learned this year with their first film.
When you're just starting, go for it. Don't doubt yourself. Like, it's not like Alex and I had to scrap an entire day of footage because it just didn't work. But I wouldn't take back a second of that time we wasted, or not wasted, because we learned so much from that day of shooting that we didn't use at all. But just go for it, don't doubt yourself, and try to develop your own style and be confident with it.
I actually have 5 basic advices to
Did I learn these as a member? Did you teach me these?
And it's one of those things that before I start any project, I look at myself in the mirror and I just repeat those over and over and over again. The first one is, be ready, because you're going to hate this project. You're gonna hate it more than anything you've ever done.
It's so true.
But as Rebecca said, it's like a love-hate relationship. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you love it, sometimes you hate it. But just be ready. When you start hating it, it doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It's just like when you're working with creative things, things that you have to make up and kind of like use your head to do it. You kind of like you improve as you do it. So you kind of get bored of things that you thought in the past in a way, because you learned something new with it. So when you see that things are starting to look a little off, just be proud, because you learned something new, and what you thought back then is not what your mindset is on right now. You know what I mean? The second tip that I have is think about everything, like literally every aspect of the movie. When I started making films, it was one of those things like my friends and I we'd get together and like, okay, so what are we doing today? We're making a film. Let's just make up the story now and put the camera wherever, and then we will, just go with it. No. Pre-production, that's where the movie is made. Just plan every single shot, every single part of the script of what you want the lighting, where you want the lighting to be, what you want the whole thing to look like, and just prepare as much as you can. It doesn't mean that you have to follow that when you're on set completely, but it's gonna serve as a good basis, because you know that if things go wrong, the original plan that you had, that's at least is going to give you a good result. The third advice that I have is trust yourself in a way. I mean, it's almost one of those things like you not trust yourself, because I think that's a little cliche, but I would say just be crazy enough to go for it. You know, you kind of have to be a little crazy to make films, but just go for it. Even if you're inside of your head, you're like, I'm not gonna do it. Just go ahead and do it, and it's gonna pay off in the end. The fourth advice that I have is watch films. Watch a lot of films from a different perspective, from a different point of view, and watch good films. You know, not exploitation action flicks, but like really good films, or the directors actually thought about everything that they did, and that they did with an intention, and that actually meant something. And the fifth advice is go out there and make films. Just make films. There's no book in the whole world that's going to teach you how to make a film. You just have to get a camera and go ahead and do it.
That was a really good answer, Pedro. I don't know how to follow that.
Make it films. Done. Drop the mic.
My biggest advice, I guess I have two parts, is be respectful of other people's jobs and be humble. I actually started out in the local film scene as an actor, and as I decided that I wanted to bridge the gap to being behind the camera, I've done everything from script supervising, producing, location scouting, all of these things, and you find that the people who just have cemented themselves into this one thing, I am an actor, I am a director, whatever, and they haven't really tried to do the other things, they don't have a respect for what the other people have to go through, because everyone has a job, because each of those jobs are important. And we're lucky, in a sense, at this level, being independent filmmakers in New England, where we're not in Hollywood, so resources are limited. That means if you are a director, you most likely are also partially a grip and a gaffer and a producer, so you are able to see those other things. But even if you want to be a director, I would suggest act in a friend's film, so you can see what it's like being an actor. If you're an actor, I would suggest helping behind the scenes on another film, because then you can see what they have to do. Because as I said, I've tried many different jobs, and there isn't an easy job if you're doing it right on set. And the second part of my answer was be humble, because it's a pet peeve of mine to be on a set and everyone just sits there and lists their resume for everybody else. And it's like, it's not a pissing contest. It frustrates me, because we're here to make a movie. We're not here to talk about who's done more than the other person, try to make each other jealous. So I guess that's my advice for starting out.
A good recommendation I wanted to add is in every single one of my films, I always act in them. I'm always some sort of part, whether it's a big or small part, and I recommend that to any future directors, because then you can get the scene of both sides, and it's even more of a challenge because you have to direct the scene you're in while acting it.
Well, it's funny that the first part of your answer, actually me and Amanda weren't originally in the script, but then we both sort of had to put ourselves in the script as actors, which turned out pretty well for us, because we could both direct and can both act, and we definitely learned a lot about filmmaking as a whole. My advice to the Film Society members specifically would be to start early. This film festival only happens once a year, and not a lot of time between when school starts and when the film festival happens, so definitely start early.
All right, guys, so that's going to wrap it up for our Q&A here. Let's give a round of applause for our Q&A members.